Hi, I'm Al Shalloway. I'm here with Joshua Barnes, and this session is about how to simplify disciplined agile. We just turned the table since Joshua does a lot more DA training than me. I figured let him talk about this. So, Joshua, I've heard from some people, I don't agree, but I've heard that they think DA is complicated. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, oftentimes, if we're going down a scenario here of where we've got like an experienced team member or agile coach, and not necessarily somebody experienced with discipline agile, but just experience with using agile, DA is not going to look like it's too complicated. It's going to be something that you can get right into. See, hey, it's guidance with a lot of options on practices and techniques and strategies and stuff that's kind of known to work. Looks great. The problem we find though is that what about when you're new to Agile? Or what about when you've been using an approach like Scrum that the body of knowledge is pretty small. It's pretty easy to read through it and kind of get your thoughts around it. And then you look at DA and it's like, whoa, this looks to be a lot. Yeah, it can look to be a lot. So one of the things that's important is how people get introduced to DA and how we do have some methods or some techniques to be able to simplify it so that we don't end up with overwhelming someone or looking like, oh, well, I'm moving from a traditional approach and now I'm looking at DA and it's got 1,500 plus options and get kind of lost. Do we have to do all of this? No, that's of course not what you do with respect to DA. So one of the things that I'll put out there as far as like how do we simplify it is that if I were your coach, let's just say we'll go back in time to when Al first touched a computer and he has no experience with Agile at all, right? So Al is just new to an Agile way of working, and Al's got all of his team members in his garage because that's where they're located. And what I would do is I'd give you some training on DA, but what I would do is I would help you make selections from the content that's there. And what we'd be doing is we'd be forming your way of working and making sure it's fit for purpose. Right. So if there were some choices you made that would be in opposition with each other, you're gonna use user stories, but you want to write a use case specification. I would coach you. I'd guide you on why those are two things you wouldn't want to select at as part of your process. Right. And what I'd also do is if you left some of the higher impact practices out, especially if this is where you're just moving into an agile way of working or moving from a basic Scrum approach, I would bring some focus on some of those things that more than likely would be beneficial to you, and I'd guide you on that. But that's the problem, right? So the problem is what if I'm not there to coach Al? What does Al do? So one of the ways that we simplify DA is we have what we call quick starts. And these are just scenarios around if you're a relatively small team, 8 to maybe a dozen people, you've got an existing product that you're enhancing. It's a kind of a common scenario like that to use a basic iterative approach. Well, we're gonna start with probably 50 or 60 options, and then we're going to not maybe use all of those, but that's going to be our starting point. We might select a few others. If you're already using an iterative approach, right? So you're already using Scrum and you're ready maybe you have been for a while for a flow-based approach. Well, we've got a scenario, a quick start that's based off of the lean life cycle. Now, some of those choices would be the same. We'd still want a definition of ready and a definition of done, but there would be some other choices based off of an iterative approach. So quick starts, the sort of initial selection of practices that are good starting points for common scenarios really helps to simplify DA. If you're a maintenance team and you're already doing continuous delivery, we've got a quick start for that. If you're a much larger team, maybe even a team of teams, well, we've got a quick start for that as well. Good solid starting points that are a reduction in the amount of practices that are there to not overwhelm, to not overload somebody, to not lead somebody down an inaccurate path of thinking DA is too big, it's too hard, it's too complex, it's too complicated, and showing how simple it actually can be. So that's just one of the primary ways we help to simplify DA.
And I want to add one more minute, another metaphor that I use, which is consider a unicycle and a 27-speed bike. Unicycle, simple to understand, difficult to master. Doesn't have a lot of moving parts in it. It's a small system. So people like, oh, that's simple. That's good. But actually, the simplicity you want is the rate at which you convey information. And I hear that in what you're saying with DA to simplify it is you have the coach either give that to you or you use these quick starts to say you only need to look at this. It's like in a 27-speed bike with 2 brakes. You can start with 1 speed that's set or recommended on hilly ground, put it here, on flat ground, put it here, and only use the rear brake.
Exactly.
And then you could add the front brake, and then you could add the derailleurs. So what's confused when people say simple, what's important is not how big the system is, but at what rate you present the system.
Yeah,
and Scrum is proud of its simplicity, and it presents you everything. That can be just as overwhelming as a big system where you just get a little bit at a time, like disciplined Agile is. So anyway, we say our goodbyes. Hope you found that useful. Stay safe.
We'll see you next time.